Is this old Craig?
Old Craig.
I'm old Craig.
I'm old Craig. I drink paint thinner.
I drink Bayless from a shoe.
What you doing in my voice channel?
Hopefully everybody that listens to us is old enough to know what the fuck we're talking about. Hopefully.
I'm not
All
sure.
right. Well, you have to do the intro today, Jay. I have a headache.
I just did it. But we're the Grumpy Dungeon Masters. I'm Grumpy Dungeon Master Jay, but joined by Grumpy Dungeon Master Christopher, and as usual, lately Dan and Christian, aka the other Grumpy Dungeon Masters.
Ew.
So real quick, since I don't really have a topic for this, but I came across a book like a couple hours ago that is called The Ilithiad. I had never heard of this book. My initial thought was, okay, so this is a retelling of the fall of Troy as Illithids. That's what I was really fucking hoping for. Unfortunately, it's not, but it's a second edition D&D book, about mind flayers and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I had never seen that, and that name. I now want a story of the fall of Troy told by an Illithid. I need this. And as they kill each other, look at all the food they're throwing away.
Brain golem?
Yeah, you can make brain golems, I guess, if they harvest the bodies early enough.
Brain golem is an 8-foot-tall humanoid-shaped construct made entirely of brain tissue with a bud of an elder brain for a head. These creations existed only to serve an elder brain and its illithid community. They do not communicate in any way and only react to telepathic orders of mind flayers and could not attack any mind flayer.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of good stuff from that book.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's. I remember the brain golem from 3rd edition. Pretty sure I've used it before.
Yeah, they were in 2nd edition.
Yeah. They are, however, not in 5e apparently.
No, all the cool monsters are not in 5e. I've really been disappointed with the 5e books. Like,
is the brain golem really not in 5e?
No. According to the Forgotten Realms wiki, it's only in 2nd and 3rd.
Like, a lot of the different beholder variants are not in the or not in 5th edition. People have converted them.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be conversions for it.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to Jeffrey Ludwig this weekend. He started up a new game where he's running his own homebrew campaign session, but he's using only monsters from 4th edition because the monsters in 5th just don't have the flavor that he wants or the type that he wants. And I remember 4th edition very well, and like there were tons of different variants of monsters. Like in 5e for Duragar, for example, you got the base one. There's like maybe
I'm sorry, we don't talk about 4th edition Duragar in this podcast because they had flaming quills in their beards they could throw at you.
We'll get beyond that, okay?
Wait,
but hold on, okay. But I'm just saying is that in like there's like maybe 10 variants of Beholder or Duragar throughout all the 5th edition books, okay? And that's including the Screamers and the Hammers and stuff like that. But I remember like in the core monster book that they were introduced in, I think it was the second one. No, it was the first one. Because they were a default monster. Because
incorrect, there are 15 different types.
Okay, 15.
16. There's also the Durgar Keeper of the Flame.
But there were that many, like in the initial 4e book, and then they expanded on them a bunch. But 4th edition did have brutes and minions, and they were more varied with their monster types, where 5th edition isn't. So I can kind of see where some were just like, oh, that's just a Durgar that's just fatter, and that's the brute,
Yeah, I will say, as far as monsters in 5th edition, I mean, Durgar, they definitely have the most variants of Durgar, probably because they're villains in a number of different 5e modules. But also, the thing is that I think you're kind of hammering at is that there is, in 5e, really hope they fix this in the new bestiary.
5R.
Whatever the hell. 5e 2024/2025 when the best area actually comes out. I hope when it comes out they actually have a fucking description with words of the creature rather than just look at this really great art we paid an artist for. That's definitely not AI by the time it comes out in 2025.
Let me tell you, they won't.
Yeah, just a description, maybe 3 lines of this is what you can get if you get a DC 15, 20, and 25 on the relevant lore. I don't know, something? Because that's what they had in 3rd edition. That's what they had in 3rd edition. In 2nd edition, you had flavor, you had ecology, you had lore, you had background, you had the family habitats.
I'm actually going to talk about the Mephits later on from 2nd edition. So
even give you sample encounters of what they might be encountered with. But
I'm in for Mephits. I know some stuff.
Yeah, and specifically from the Planescape setting, so I know you know all about it.
Yeah.
But they did mention when they were talking about the DMG that when they're talking about magic items, that they were expanding the monster list when the monster came out with items that they could drop, very similar to how we all liked Level Up 5e's monster manual. So I wouldn't mind that back. Like, I don't like that stuff doesn't change edition to edition really, unless you're 4th edition, then it changes drastically. But I understand that maybe not everyone, like all of us here on this little podcast, know what a goblin is in 5th edition. And we know what they are in D&D. We know how they work, and we're okay with that. Like, we don't need any more description of that. But not everyone has got our tenure, and that's something that they did focus on a bit with the DMG, that they've talked about a lot of how they're focusing on newer DMs. So I really do hope they bring all that stuff back. It's going to be, I think, 1500 DR when everything starts, so things can change. So I would expect to see updates to the lore. Like, what are Mind Flayers doing this year? How are the Githyanki dealing? Like, I want some more data on how the hordes of orcs and goblins have changed. Are orcs now all kind of like, Spanish Mexican-ish? Do they all like tacos now? Like, give me some data. I don't care what it is. Just give me something new to read, or just give me the old stuff to read again. I don't want to have to go to Forgotten Realms Wiki to get all the data that I need. It should be in the books.
Yeah, it's in the books somewhere. From 1st edition and 2nd edition and all the editions. But yeah, like updates for 5e or 5R would be very, very nice for newer game masters. And honestly, bring back things like the Brain Golem and all the other long forgotten monsters. They could release a monster manual every 6 months like clockwork and have it filled with new things.
Yeah. And that's kind of what they did for 4th edition.
People do love a good monster book, and I think, I know they're trying to take like a kind of careful approach to books and how many they release a year, and that's probably a better thing than just a slew of like swing and miss splat books of random nonsense. But like monster books, like even if they just did some thin like paperback kind of like soft cover like monster, like they used to do the Monsters Compendium.
Oh yeah,
the soft cover books, and it's not a full size of like a monster manual, but it would have like 50 monsters in it. Yeah. Just a nice little addition, and they would do themed ones for different ones. Planescape had one, Dark Sun had one. Every campaign setting got their own little thin thing. Just hey, here's 50 books that are monsters or so that are themed to that campaign setting.
50 monsters, $25 a piece. Very, very simple to do.
I like how they did the Planescape and the Spelljammer box sets. I know that probably is going to reduce their sales more because only DMs are going to buy those now. Players aren't going to spend $80 on a third of the content. But I like that. I like when there's a campaign book, a monster book, and the player editions. And I mean, like that happened in 4th edition. It seemed to work out really well. I mean, except for that it was 4th edition, but
happened in 3rd edition and 2nd edition. I'm hoping that what they described for the new 5R for like the Forgotten Realms, where it's going to be a player focused book and then a campaign setting, kind of more DM focused book. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a good divide. I hope they do it well. I don't know how it will go, but I like the idea of them getting back to that kind of division of kind of labor.
So to kind of get back on the point about the quills.
Oh, God damn it! I was hoping we were just going to forget it and move on.
No, I'm fine if we don't.
No, since you asked, it's been a while. The monster manuals in 4th edition were unique in that they were pretty much monsters for the Nintir Vale, the Points of Light campaign setting that 4th edition was. I think it was Crawford's idea. It's essentially Faerun Light. It's just another similar but different. And the two that I can remember very clearly off the top of my head that are similar but different are the Duergar and the Minotaurs. Talking about Minotaurs first. They had the ability to eat the heart of an opponent that they defeated, and they could get different aspects of that race that they ate. So, like, if they ate a drow heart, they could get the Shadow Step, the Fairy Fire, or the Darkness ability that the drows naturally had. The Duergar had fire quills that were in their beards or in their hair because they were all enslaved by Asmodeus. So they were I know a lot of the Duergar now are kind of like in that same bubble, but because they had the influence of that, Devil Lord, they were pretty much always had that fire aspect to them, so they could react with like hitting people with fire quills and whatnot. And that was the small little bit of lore to them concerning that.
I am worse now for knowing that.
but in the manual that they talked about all this, they had a tactics section, a lore section, and they divided everything up by, if you try to figure things out. They gave you how to group a bunch of monsters together, because like you always got like 3 or 4 different variants, because they had like brutes, the spellcasters, and just your normal like foot soldier kind of thing. So they would tell you how to set up an encounter. They gave you example encounters. So I don't know. I just felt like the 5e books were very lacking altogether.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to previous editions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. I can't remember if there's any difference with any other races at all. It's been too long, but I remember the fire quills and the Minotaurs eating hearts was always my favorite. Eladrin were very different too. They weren't like tied to the seasons or anything like that.
I had never even heard of Eladrins until 4th edition, and then they seemed to sort of just replaced Elf as the favorite race of all players for some reason.
Yeah,
it was really odd, and it's like they were the high elves above high elves, is how everybody thought of them.
That's what they were in 4th edition. But in 5th edition, they're linked to the seasons, and they're not like above the other elves. High elf is the highest.
That's probably good. That's a more creative, version of it, at least. Like just saying, "Oh, well, these are the high elves above high elves." That's boring. It's gonna suck. Elves, like people who play elves tend to play them as dicks anyway, who think they're better than everybody. So then having taking that to that next level, nobody wants that in their party.
So in 2nd edition, the Eladrin were not a playable race. They were the kind of the they were the natives of Arborea in the plains, and they were like very elf-like, elf and fae-like, but they were never meant to be a playable race. They were the equivalent of like angels and devils and demons for the elves. And so, yeah, they were the powerful, like lords of them were really high up, like kind of archfey, like knights and monarchs and that sort of thing. But they weren't meant to be a playable race. They were things that you would encounter, and they were the kind of fairy, like archfairy, like the goodly folk that you would have to be careful of, or would make tricksy deals with you and that sort of thing.
Yeah, see that's a way better version of them, I think.
Yeah. So I was just kind of scrolling through the 40 Monster Manual, and I came across the Githyanki.
Mm-hmm.
So they have
Did they have fire quills?
No, they didn't have fire quills. They had two other like consistent racial things amongst all the monster types that they had. One was called of course I lose it just a second, I want to read it. One is called Iron Mind. It's an immediate interrupt, which is a reaction. When it would get hit by attack, it gains +2 to all defenses until the end of its next turn. So all the Githyanki share that, and they also share an ability called Trace Chance, which is range 5. The next melee attack made against a target gains a +5 power bonus to the attack roll, and if it hits, it's automatically a critical hit.
So every Githyanki had that?
Yes.
Okay, sure, whatever.
Okay.
Is it a psychic type ability? Like the other one sounded like it was, but
but
they're both kind of some nonsense that was made up for 4th edition and don't really have any place in
the Trace Chance is a recharge ability, but they all share that.
Yeah,
what Knowles had Pack Attack.
Pack Tactics, sure.
Sure, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's what I liked. They were similar but different. I remember the goblins. There were just so many goblins when I started going through here, and I think that's why I collected so many goblin minis, because they had like these insane variety of goblins that you can use from like level 1 through 10 that could always be a really good challenge. And not just like hobgoblins and bugbears, but they had those as well. But just the base goblins are just crazy amount.
Yeah, you get your goblin shaman, your goblin bombardier, and like a million other types of goblins that are effectively the same things, but can do.
So in this alone, for just goblins, we have a cutter, a black blade, a warrior, sharpshooter, hexer, skull cleaver, and an underboss. That's just the goblins.
And that's just in the monster manual.
And that's in the monster manual. And there were other books that added on more and more goblin types.
Yeah.
And then the hobgoblins have just as many different variants. Bugbears just have like 2, because they got a strangler and a warrior. So one to hit you, one to just choke you out.
Yeah, one that uses a garrote.
That's just a rope. I don't know. I have high hopes for the monster manual in 5R. I hate how they laid it out. I still think it's too clunky. It's too blocky.
I don't know that I've seen the layout.
It's in the player's handbook. Because they added all the monsters that people could shapeshift into or summon.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't like that design. It just feels like there's too much wasted space per block. I like the 5e1. There's still a lot of wasted space there, but there's even more in the 5R. I like the 4th edition. I like the 3rd edition stat blocks. A lot of detail packed in there. So it was kind of hard to read initially until you figure out how to like really kind of navigate through it. But it takes 30 minutes to figure out.
Yeah, I kind of like the new ones actually. That makes they're easy to read.
They need to put some things on the same line.
Nah. My eyes appreciate the spacing.
Oh, do you need a large text format book of the Dungeon Master's Guide?
I will soon.
I do if I'm wearing my glasses.
I'm actually surprised that you haven't come out with the large print player's manual.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm farsighted or whatever the one. I can't see long distances, so I have to take off glasses to actually read stuff.
Same.
So I would need actually a large print one if I was going to wear glasses to read. Since we're still on the topic of monsters and text boxes and everything else, I am going to go ahead and talk about the Mephits, specifically from 2nd edition Planescape Monstrous Compendium. It lore is all throughout this damn thing. It's much more so than even the the standard monster compendium you would get, because this one is specific to Planescape. Like starting out, there's a whole full page of just lore on Mephits in general, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 16 different Mephits on about 8 pages.
Yep.
And I had never really read up on Mephits through this book, so I just started going through. And man, I absolutely love the flavor they've given to Mephits. First off, so the ecology of the Mephits. This will be our ecology unless somebody else has another one. Mephits don't breed. Mephits don't eat. Mephits are simply just made. And according to the Planescape manual, they are made by evil beings. Although they're all neutral for some weird reason. That I didn't quite get.
Because they're made of the elemental planes, which are all neutral. But they're used by lower planar creatures mostly.
Yeah, it seems odd, but okay. I could definitely still dig it because of the way that they use them. And apparently, every single Mephit that's in here, they are by nature annoying. Like to the fact that people just want to strangle them. They actually have a few good lines of things that Mephits would say, like I think it's the water Mephit. If a water Mephit will intentionally, or no, an ice Mephit will intentionally just join a party without asking. They'll just fucking show up and start adventuring with you.
That's awesome.
And they don't really help. They don't do anything. They just sort of stand there and say shitty things. Or just throw out lines like "buck up, you can handle these fiends," or if not, you'll make good dretches. And for anyone who's not familiar, a dretch is it's a lower plane fiend.
Yeah.
It's the lowest of the low. So, and one other thing in the lore of these things that I found absolutely fucking amusing, and I know Christian would know about this. So these greater powers that create Mephits will actually give them out as gifts to enemies. And the type of Mephit they give you means something different.
Yes, there is a code for amongst lower planar powers that they use Mephit. So when you get a gift of a Mephit, you may or may not know who it comes from, and then the type of Mephit means something different about what its creator or whoever's gifting it to you is saying to you. Like an air Mephit is a warning to beware, for the giver intends to surprise the recipient with an ambush or some sort of political treachery.
Yep. Yeah, like the gift of a fire Mephit indicates displeasure at the enemy's action. An ice Mephit means the enemy is forbidden to enter one's home, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yes, it is a fantastic little bit of lore that they each have this kind of little sly meaning. And so that somebody gives you this thing, like radiant Mephits are like a white flag, or it's
a truce offering. Yeah, truce offering.
Salt Mephit is a blatant declaration of warfare.
So which Mephit is the white elephant gift?
I don't know. I don't have a full list of what all of them mean, unfortunately, in this manual.
Ash is that it doesn't think the recipient is worth corresponding with anymore.
You are beneath me.
The dust is a subtle threat that shows that the sender has recognized some plot of the recipients against them.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it also says never give your friends a Mephit.
Yeah, and also one of the great facts about Mephits is they all give themselves like super long, grandiose names and a list of like ridiculous titles.
Yeah, I mean, could you? We were just talking about the Eladrin being uppity, and but the Eladrin are actually powerful. Could you imagine having a Mephit who thinks it's an Eladrin? Because that's what they all think of themselves.
Yeah.
They
They all have an exaggerated sense of ego and self-importance. So they're these very small, not very powerful creatures, but they all they have these like outsized personalities. They all think of themselves as like the little lords of their own, like, legends in their own mind.
Yeah, they bow before the person who created them or summoned them. And for everybody else, including other Mephits, they just constantly shit on everybody.
Yep, they're great.
So now people know how to use Mephits in their campaigns.
So what happens? How does their digestion work?
They don't eat. I said that.
No,
They don't.
They can still chew and swallow, though.
Hold on. Whoa, pump your brakes here. Guys, I'm looking online right now, and under Society, Forgotten Realms Wiki, which is, of course is links to where it comes from here, Mephit guano was the substance which possessed magical properties. It was in fact used to enchant items, and in a throne, it exploded in a deadly, stinking cloud. Carrying such items around was frowned upon, as their stench was surely to scare people away. Yeah, by Neverwinter Nights 2, they actually pooped. Therefore, they had to have been eating something.
Yeah, but that comes from that's from
Yeah.
Neverwinter Nights 2, which is a later thing than what I've read. I like to go by the original stuff. So, I mean, maybe I mean, this is also the Planescape edition. So in the Planescape edition, maybe they don't eat.
They don't need to eat. I guess they're able to, but like typically it would just do whatever they're made out of. They're completely made of their element. So like a water Mephit is literally just water.
So also, and under Homelands, from 1994's A Monsters Compendium Ravenloft Appendix 3, Creatures of Darkness, they appeared in there, and they could be used all throughout the Domains of Dread.
I could believe they'd be in Domains of Dread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little obnoxious.
Oh yeah,
creatures that you serve a master, though it even says that they are loyal, but they usually annoy even their creators.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for my my buddy Mike, who's running us through the Ravenloft game, and I know he's going to listen to this. Hey, feel free to throw a Mephit in there somewhere.
Make it a bone Mephit.
Yeah, go to Our Better Monsters to get to the best Mephits.
In every Planescape game I have run, and I will do this in the long run. I give the players a way to create their own Mephit, so they get a very loyal but obnoxious servant.
Oh man.
You've definitely piqued Dan's interest.
I'm so excited.
And I essentially give it as a way to where like whoever creates it acts as a familiar, but you don't have to be a wizard or whatever. It's just anybody that creates it has that, and they have their little pet, and it will be obnoxious, but it will be loyal to the death.
So I was curious about when you guys were reading off the lore of the Mephits here. I just linked from our Better Monsters, Highmark's version of Mephits, and of course he's got all kinds of good lore in there, and he's got a wide variety, probably of every Mephit type to appear from 2nd edition through 5th edition.
There's even some that aren't.
Yeah, and some pretty unique looking ones in there too. And he also, of course, he arranges his monsters the way I want the bestiary or monster manual to arrange their frickin' monsters.
No, this is great.
Because it's Mephit lore, Mephit tactics, encounter groups of Mephits. That's what I want. Like, if I want to know exactly how they end up, how I need to play these guys, and just in short form. But yeah, that's how I want it. So while you guys were reading all that off, I kind of went down a rabbit hole looking up. I'm like, what? I was thinking, Mephits. You were saying they were inherently neutral, but created by evil creatures.
Yeah,
I was thinking about like evil and elemental, and it draws me, of course, back to Temple of Elemental Evil, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, how do they not have Mephits in the Temple of Elemental Evil? And of course, they didn't. They had an Temple of Elemental Evil 2, and then in remakes of it and stuff like that, but not in the OG Temple of Elemental Evil. But I kind of went down the rabbit hole here of like the Temple of Elemental Evil, just kind of reading through here, just kind of looking through the artists and everything like that. So the I'm trying to fake. It just lost it. The artist that did the paintings for the Temple of Elemental Evil was who was it?
Oh,
He did the
no.
cover of the original DMG, I believe.
Oh, that's not Errol Otis.
No, it's not Otis. Dave Trampier.
Oh, yeah, Trampier.
Have you guys read his Wikipedia entry?
I have, but it's been a while.
Holy shit! Does he have a wild ride? So he was probably one of the most iconic artists in the early days of TSR. So he did the original cover of the PHB with the thieves stealing the gems from the eye of the demon with the fire in front of him. He did a number of incredible like Dragon magazine spreads. He did like a Wormy comic strip that was in there that you probably remember if you
I
actually
remember
read those. He did just a ton of stuff, and of course the Temple of Elemental Evil. But the cover art for Village of Hamlet, the original Dungeon Master screen, Gamma World, Deities and Demigods, like some really iconic looking stuff, and also the DMG, like the big genie or Afridi that's walking along with the huge scimitar, the 1979 version of DMG. So, so reading through about Dave Trampier, I was like, hey, whatever happened to that guy? In the late 1980s, Dave Trampier suddenly disappeared. The last installment of Wormy appeared in the April 1988 issue of Dragon magazine, number 132. Despite the fact that the comic was in the middle of an unfinished storyline, no further Wormy comics were ever published. In August 1988 issue of Dragon, issue 136, in response to a reader letter, the Dragon editors wrote, "We regret to announce that Wormy will no longer be appearing in Dragon magazine. We are looking into the possibility of adding another graphic series in the future." Kim Mohan, the then editor of Dragon, told Phil Foglio that payments for Wormy and other royalty payments sent to Trampier had been returned unopened. Foglio explained that when an artist's checks are returned uncashed, he is presumed dead. So he disappears in late 80s, like 1988, is the last anybody hears anything of him.
Yep.
And then reappearance. Trampier was discovered by coincidence, working as a taxi driver. In February 2002, Aaron Thompson did a night shift ride along in Carbondale, Illinois, random small town Illinois, with a local yellow taxi driver for an article for Southern Illinois University student paper. Taxi driver was Dave Trampier, who told Thompson he had moved to Carbondale from Chicago 8 months previously. Thompson, who did not know of Trampier's work as an artist, published a story in Trampier's photograph in the Daily Egyptian on February 15th, 2002. Word soon circulated that Trampier was alive. Several companies and individuals contacted him to inquire about commissioning new artwork, republishing old artwork, or appearing at conventions. Trampier rebuffed all attempts to draw him back into the fantasy gaming world and continued to drive his taxi. One of the people who reached out to him was a fellow cartoonist, Jolly Blackburn.
Yep.
Who simply wanted to talk to him about a Wormy compilation that had been done a few years prior. Blackburn reported that he politely asked me not to call him again and to lose his number. Apparently, a lot of people tracked him down through the same article, and he was fed up with all the phone calls. Seemed like a nice guy, though. He just wants nothing to do with the strip or the gaming industry in general. In 2003, it was stated that Trampier was alive and well, but not currently working in comics or gaming. In 2004, Trampier's fellow artist and brother-in-law, Tom Wham, stated that he believed Trampier still exists somewhere in Illinois, but doesn't know where. In 2008, Trampier visited Castle Perilous Games and Books, a game store in Carbondale, to see the new edition of Titan that had been published by Valley Games. That was the only contact he made with the games community until several years later. Fast forward another 5 years. In 2013, several misfortunes struck Trampier, and he suffered a mild stroke, lost his job when the yellow taxi company went out of business, and he discovered that he had cancer. Needing money, Trampier contacted Scott Thorne, the owner of Castle Perilous Games and Books, and offered to sell 8 of his original pieces of artwork, including the original cover for the 1979 Dungeon Master screen. Thorne bought all the artwork and then tried to convince him to have his Wormy comics republished. Trampier was suspicious of the offer and wanted to ensure that TSR would not have any part of the publication. Seemingly surprised by the news that TSR had been taken over by Wizards of the Coast almost 20 years earlier. Thorne suggested that Trollslord Games might be a good publisher to approach. So Trampier accepted an invitation to display some of his original artwork at Egypt Wars, a local gaming convention, and would be his first public connection to the fantasy gaming world since his 25-year disappearance. Representatives of Trollslord Games were also scheduled to be at the convention, and Thorne hoped Trampier might talk to them about his publishing deal. However, Trampier suddenly died on March 14th, 2014, 3 weeks prior to the convention. Holy shit. The guy, so apparently he got so mad at TSR in 1988, he just fucked off and disappeared to Nowhereville, Illinois, and then stopped doing anything with gaming and never picked up the phone again to do artwork until he literally was dying of cancer.
That is
I've got to dig deeper on this and hopefully come up with something more. There's got to be rumors at TSR as to
somebody at TSR
fucking pissed him off.
Somebody knows.
1988, that had to have been like as Gygax was getting the boot too, right?
Yeah, that same time period. Yep.
But like, man, just to be so bitter, like 25 years later, like I'm dying of cancer, I can't sell this shit or have anything involved with those shitheads at TSR. Like that's some fucking hatred that you hold on to.
Well, it's more so of the fact that he hated TSR so vehemently, and he didn't even find out for 20 years that they had sold to Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. It's crazy. And like, I mean, I had seen his name around for years and years and years, but I mean, I've got his artwork hanging in my basement. Like, it's some beautiful stuff. Like, it is beautiful originals, 1970s feel for fantasy gaming is what it is. So anyway, that was my rabbit hole I went down while you guys were talking about methods leading from the Temple of Elemental Evil. Sorry to end it on a depressing note, though. But yeah.
Yeah, welcome to my world. That's the kind of shit that happens to me all the time. I'll read one thing about Mephits, next thing you know, I'm off on some other guy who worked for TSR or some other weird shit. If I ever remember to, I'll talk about Sir Ian Livingstone on here that I found out about in that same manner.
Yeah.
I do remember the Wormy comics in Dragon Magazine, though. For those who haven't read it, Wormy was just a dragon who liked to play pool.
Yeah.
The one episode specifically, I remember it. There's a goblin or some other little critter watching all of his goblin friends building a castle for Wormy, and he expects them to all get eaten. And at the end of it, Wormy just pays all of them. Like, he didn't care about eating them. He just wanted them to build him a castle to play with.
So to kind of go on that while you were reading that Dan, I did some looking around.
Mm-hmm.
So there was someone that did get in contact with him before his death. In regards to the falling out, it's a part of the falling out Trampier had, and this is a fairly common info, so they're not trying to be too specific of that. It came out that he wanted to self-publish the Wormy compilations. TSR said no, that they belonged to them. He essentially sold each strip to TSR/Dragon Magazine. Mm-hmm. So in a last effort regarding the Wormy involved selling shares of profits of a future Wormy compilation to fans, and then using that money to hire a lawyer to take TSR to court. He lost, case closed. He repaid most of the investors off a short time later, and that's when he disappeared.
So he kind of he wanted to retake his art and publish it himself, and then he lost to big corporate America. That fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
He had a falling out with Mohan and company at TSR.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very much that's a common story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
that sort of thing happens to musicians.
Musicians
too,
constantly,
right?
yeah. Yep. Yeah, especially like a lot of the musicians, they would sign those early deals just to become famous, but they didn't realize they were also signing the rights to everything they ever make.
Well, especially like you get those bands where it's essentially a bunch of kids that are that are teenagers that get discovered, and they don't know what they're doing, man. They're like 18, 19, 20. They don't know all the legal nonsense. They're just like, oh sweet, we got discovered, awesome, yeah, I'll sign
I'm
this deal.
I'm getting some money for my art. Sure, awesome, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Not reading far enough into the whole contract, and next thing you know, you have to start paying out everything, and you end up making almost nothing. That happened to so many bands.
Yeah, and it looks like he reclused himself so much that he didn't realize, like, self-publishing, Kickstarter, all that stuff, even though it was kind of in its infancy in the early 2000s, they ever became a thing. And he was working with Troll Lord Games, it looks like, but he was doing
that's that he basically got approached, and the guy was trying to convince him to sell his.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure that they had no connections with TSR and WotC, but he was doing it by himself. So that's why it was taking such a long time, and he passed on a few months later, it looks like.
It is good that he still actually owned the physical artwork, though.
And a collector bought it, so
Yeah, I know that a lot of the second edition art, some of it was just destroyed or thrown in the trash. There's a documentary, I don't remember the name of it. I think it's called Eye of the Beholder on Amazon, that details out the artist who worked for them during that second edition period, Caldwell and Elmore and all of those guys. That goes into the whole thing of it. But when TSR sort of collapsed near the end of it, they had all been working in one studio, the 4 artists there together, making the incredible pieces of art. And then when the whole thing sort of collapsed at the end of it, some of that art just fucking disappeared.
And it seemed to be a much older mindset too, because like I remember reading Chuck Jones' biography when I was in high school, and how when he was doing his like drawings when he was a kid and when he started in the industry, how they would say, no, you have to draw on both sides of the paper because we don't want to waste any paper. He's like, well, what if I draw a masterpiece on both sides? He's like, well, then we'll just have to show one, not the other. He's like, I'm not going to do that. So they were penny pinching that much.
Yeah.
And then like the Doctor Who stuff, I know it's all the old Doctor Who, like first Doctor, second Doctor, mostly the second Doctor, film reels were used again. They just erased the videos and then re-recorded over them.
I did read about that.
Yeah, because they just wanted to save more money.
Cheap as hell. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
So it's like all this old stuff, like this old mentality. It's like, nah, draw on both sides of the paper. Yeah, we'll only show one forever, but who cares?
Yeah.
I love it too when they go find old paintings and then they X-ray them and find out there's a whole painting underneath the painting, whether it's like the first draft of the painting or like I did this and fuck you, I'm gonna get rid of it and I paint something else.
Yeah, that actually kind of leads me to another topic I've been wanting to talk about for several weeks here. And actually seems like a really good segue. Is the Savage Coast for Dungeons and Dragons, and I know Christian's at least somewhat familiar with it. It was later on referred to as Red Steel, and that's what I remember it actually being sold as. But I vaguely remembered Red Steel being a campaign setting for second edition D&D, but I never owned it. I never looked into it. But I had come across through one of these weird rabbit holes, the Savage Coast, and that it was part of the Mystara campaign setting and was later a spinoff into the campaign setting for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. And they had actually released 3 supplements called, it's like Savage Coast Odyssey, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, I just stumbled upon that.
Yeah. That's
Dungeons and Dragons Odyssey, Savage Coast campaign book.
Yes,
1996.
They had
that is like one of the last things that TSR published then.
Yes, yeah, it's one of the absolute last things. But they never released physical copies of it.
Oh,
it was released online only. This is the first online only stuff for Dungeons and Dragons that was ever released. And I at first I was worried, oh shit, because these things were released on disc in the sort of early internet days. So I was very concerned that these things had fucking just disappeared. But after a little bit of searching, I was actually able to find PDFs of all 3 of the items. But yeah, like, there's so many things from the early days of the internet that are just gone forever. And I'm sure there's some Dungeons and Dragons stuff, whether it's official or, unofficial stuff, that's gone and will never be seen or heard from again.
Yeah. Savage Codes. Yeah, this was kind of like the end days of TSR.
Yeah, because 96, I think TSR got bought out, I think in 2001. I believe that's when it was. But they were really they were starting to hit the downward swing at that point. They had so many different products that were out, all these different settings, and I think it's kind of like pro wrestling. Pro wrestling goes in waves. You'll have like a 10-year period where it's hot, and then a 10-year period where it's cold. And they were sort of hitting that end of run.
Something that was created in the early dawns of the internet that is still around to this day and going strong?
I do, but go ahead and tell everybody else.
Krogdor.
Oh, well, that's not what I thought you were going to talk about. I thought you were going to talk about Old Greg.
No, I was gonna segue into Old Greg, and I think Old Greg is pretty new from all things considered.
It's like 15.
Old Greg is 16 years old at this point.
Oh man.
Yeah, but
Old Greg can drive a car legally.
Old Greg should not be anywhere near a car.
Old Greg can drive a car legally, but he doesn't do it because so I was going through a bunch of reels this weekend, and the first one I found was the one we'll talk about here in a moment. But then I found the Old Greg from the Mighty Boosh television show stat block. I tried to actually get it. I went to the guy's Instagram page and I followed his instructions to get it, but I never actually got the physical printout of the Old Greg. So all we have is what he talked about: drinking paint thinner to heal himself. What was the other one?
He throws Bailey in a shoe to poison you. And
so yeah, it was kind of funny. I really like I said, I think I complained about this a little while ago, where I haven't created my own unique monster yet. Like, I haven't created an Old Greg. Like, that would be amazing, everything else I have is just kind of like, spins on, creative monsters. But then I found something that kind of piqued my interest, and it was his name is like Ryan Anime DM on YouTube, and he basically had an idea for tougher boss fights. And it was one that it was such a simple concept. I was surprised I hadn't thought of it before. And then when I mentioned to you guys about it, you guys said, "Oh yeah, we know all about that." So I guess it's just new information for me and other DMs who've only played 4th edition. So the concept of it is that you take one boss and you actually have it be, multiple different creatures that are just that one token. And you play, you still do initiative with them as normal, but you kind of just cycle around the different monsters throughout the rounds, and the players only see one monster, but you're actually playing 4. And the example given on the reel, they used the Thigh Crane, and there were 4 Thigh Crane stats that he used. He kept individual stat blocks for each of them, and he basically had each one do very special things. Like, the first one was melee, second one was an archer, the third one bit you, and the second one was a defensive style Thigh Crane. And I thought that was a pretty interesting way of handling it. It works for the Thigh Crane because you can kind of imagine a bug being super fast, or you could do it with something really big like an ogre and have multiple ogres, so like a 2-headed ogre, and just have 2 of them be like super big and strong. One's casting magic, one's hitting something. That's straight out of Warcraft, Mm-hmm. So, but with Coffee, Christian, you said that, oh yeah, I've known about that for years. So Why don't you tell me your experiences with it?
Yeah, one of the, and I've seen this with other monsters, but one of the first ones that came to mind that did that was there used to be you would fight a kraken, and they would have the kraken itself, but each of its tentacles would be a separate kind of creature that would have its own AC and hit points and its attack. So like you could slowly, like if you killed the tentacle, then it exited the fight. That's you severing that tentacle and getting it out of the fight. But it had its own like initiative, and so you would fight the kraken, and it would raise its bunch of tentacles, and they could each make their attacks, and you could slowly, hack them all off, and then the main body of the kraken could make its bite or use its storm magic and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And what's weird too is like you think that would be a very like, especially for a kraken, like that seems like a very logical way of handling that monster. But like you look at the kraken in 5e, and like it doesn't have any of that. It's just a big monster, a big mini, by itself. And I see everyone making all these great things, kind of like how you mentioned it with the main kraken and a bunch of tentacles everywhere. So I'm just surprised that they kind of did it a little bit too, like with the Durgar hammer, where like there's a weak point in it, or there's like a different area of the monster that you could attack and get, special bonuses for that. I'm surprised they didn't lean into that a little bit more with monsters like that, like the Kraken, attacking different parts of it. I know the False Hydra, even being a very popular monster that's not official, like that has multiple heads, that you have to keep separate actions for. So
Hydra was another one where they used to do that a lot, where each head would have its own AC and hit points and abilities that could do stuff. Sometimes they would do it with whatchamacallit, what's the thing with like the dragon head?
The Chimera.
Chimera, yeah, where each head would have its own like AC and hit points and an attack, so they would make, and they would go at separate times. It was a way to do kind of boss fights that weren't just one bag of hit points, because you could disable parts of a creature and make the fight slowly, you're whittling it down and making it easier for you.
Yeah.
Instead of just this one thing that is like D&D 5th edition's big problem is like big monsters are just big bags of hit points. Yeah, it's the same problem for 4th edition too.
We've talked about it on here before. It's a change in sort of mindset from 2nd edition to 3rd edition, because 1st, 2nd, basic, you didn't have hardcore rules for everything. So as a player, I might say, okay, well, I want to attack the goat head of the Chimera. And then the DM would be like, okay, you attack the goat head, and he would determine what the AC is, even if it didn't have it specifically. He would just, you make shit up on the fly. Whereas 5e, it's hardcore rules, it's solid rules. This is what it can do. It's just a sack of hit points. There's nothing different about it. You don't get to just randomly make stuff up.
Well, in certain editions, like even some places in 2nd edition, but definitely in 1st edition and older ones, you would find certain creatures where they would have things like, if it had a weak point, it might say, hey, like the AC is different for that point, and if you do X amount of damage to that point, it has this effect on the monster. There was some more complexity for certain creatures in there.
In the scenarios where it doesn't have that kind of stuff for 1st and 2nd edition, it was still just sort of expected that players will try to do stuff like that. I can't tell you how many times 2nd ed I'd have players say, I want to aim for the head. There were, later on, they came out with rules for aiming for specific targets. I know 1st edition had them also, but it wasn't in the player's handbook.
Yeah, doing that is opening a Pandora's box in any given game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you let one player be creative, and the next guy that goes like, I also aim for his fucking head. And suddenly it's like, okay, everyone's taking -5, but gets +10 damage. And I regret my life decisions.
but you understand, like, that is what that game was like. It was very, very common.
Yeah, I had a situation happen like that once where we were playing through one of the adventure, or I guess D&D encounters at that point in time, because it was 4th edition. They had a young white dragon attack a bunch of people in Neverwinter. And the evil king was controlling the dragon with this crown that he had. And essentially, you're supposed to stop the evil king to eventually, stop the dragon. And the evil king was a pretty hard fight, until one of the players goes, wait, magic missile always hits, right? So can I just hit the crown off the top of his head with magic missiles? And I'm like, and I was a young DM, so I was like, yeah, sure, but you're gonna have to do a very difficult Arcana check to control magic missiles that hit a certain point on a target, not just the target itself. And of course, they roll fantastic, and it goes off and it hits the crowd. And at that point, then I was one like, I want to aim for the magic missile in the guy's eyes. So it's like, no, you can't do it anymore. It's annoying.
Yep.
But usually I tell them, you get that. It only works right now and never again.
I'll let you do it this time, but probably not in the future. Yeah, I remember having people try to blind targets as well. I shoot the giant in his eye. God damn it! Stop.
Yeah, that stuff would kind of depend. It would depend on the circumstance. Like a lot of times, if I'm like, hey, you're just fighting random creatures, like, nah, you can't shoot at its eye. If you're fighting like a Cyclops, a classic creature where like the classic mythology of it is like, Odysseus blinding him, and then I'm like, okay, that makes sense there. Like this is the classic glaring weakness of this creature. Yeah, you can make an attempt to go after that. Or if you're doing more creative things, like your way of blinding is the old pillow party, like I'm gonna dump the pillowcase over its head and then we're gonna go to town.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean,
sure. Pockets in the Cyclops.
Yeah, I mean, I would allow, like, for example, like if you're playing some sort of a monster that has like grabbed somebody, and you're next up in the attack order, and they're only 30 feet away, and they're running off with your buddy. I'm shooting to try to disarm him, but not do damage. All right, I'll allow it this time. I guess, why not?
Makes me wonder how like the Fallout, like I really should play the Fallout system someday, like how they handle like the VAT system as a tabletop, because like you could shoot weapons out of hands in the Fallout video game. So I wonder if they have anything like that. Also, do you guys remember Superman Returns when he gets shot in the eye?
Fortunately, no.
No.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, Superman. Everyone has eyes as a weakness. Superman's eye can't stop a bullet. And then they had the Superman Returns with somebody, I can't remember. One of the Supermans we all forgot about. And like a bad guy shoots him in the eye with a handgun and just like bounces off his eye because his eyes are bulletproof. It's just.
But is his insides bulletproof?
Well, in Justice League, yes. They had to use a kryptonite scalpel to cut through his skin, his muscles, and everything. Otherwise, they couldn't put it together. And then they had to use a kryptonite hook to stitch him back together.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep, I like that. It follows some internal logic.
Yeah. And Batman just happens to have all the kryptonite, so.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's a wealthy oligarch. Of course he does.
What's his superpower? Billionaire.
So
yeah.
So tell me why
a good guy.
Why did Lex Luthor get cancer from being around all the kryptonite for as long as he was, but the old Chinese man that had the quote unquote jade dragon statue that was actually kryptonite didn't get cancer from being around that jade statue all his life?
Because none of that stuff makes sense.
Yep.
It is all just what serves the story in the moment. Yeah, we're not going to worry about thinking that far through things.
Brandon Ruth, that's his name.
Or maybe Lex Luthor didn't get cancer from the kryptonite. He got it from drinking the water, or something else that he ate, or some other product, some pharmaceutical he was using,
or just the normal way.
Yeah.
Kryptonite glasses, kryptonite fork. Yeah. You don't remember Superman Returns with Brandon Ruth, where it was like a sequel to the Christopher Reeve Batman?
That's the one where he had a kid.
Yeah, where he impregnated Lois Lanes, and the question came up was like, wouldn't that come out like a shotgun blast?
Yeah, that was the Mallrats quote. Mallrats quote.
Did you know that in 1990 there was a Forgotten Realms adventure called Ninja Wars?
I didn't know about this, but I'm about to look it up.
It was I think the last of the Oriental Adventures line.
Oh man,
my goodness, Oriental Adventures, baby.
There it is. You mean Kara Tour?
Oh my god. Ninja?
No, it was actually just published as Forgotten
You know what?
Realms.
Yeah,
FROA1. Forgotten Realms Ninja Wars.
The Ninja Wars of 1357 DR. It is a time of worry and concern. Something is wrong this year. A political rival has hired a clan of ninja to disrupt the pilgrimage and disgrace of Matsumoto. But the Daimyo has his own ninja, and just to be safe, he decides to hire a party of adventurers to make sure everything runs smoothly. Of course, it does not.
Written by Nigel Findlay.
That sounds like an Asian name. So December 1990, that is the height of like American Ninja Warrior and Kickboxer and like everything fucking ninja. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are reaching their popularity. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You're cashing on fucking ninjas.
TSR had to cash in on that ninja. Ninjas.
They even threw 4 ninjas on the cover of it.
Oh my god. Please, oh Jesus Christ. I'm looking through the description of this thing. Coming soon after Ronin Challenge, Oriental Adventure 6, and Test of the Samurai, Oriental Adventure 7, both published in 1990, Ninja Warriors, appears to be the third in a series of adventures named for Oriental Adventures classes. But whereas the first two already have a loosely connected storyline, Ninja Warriors has no links to either, apart from also being set in WA, like OA7. It even recommends Blood of the Yakuza, Oriental Adventures 4, published in 1987 for background on the WA. Moreover, it has a new module code, FROA, Forgotten Realms Oriental Adventures, while it hints at planned stronger connection to the Forgotten Realms setting. Obviously, this is not really true, because there really wasn't much of anything about Oriental Adventures until, here it is, Oriental Adventures 3rd edition in 2001.
Yep.
Which apparently is the setting of Rokugan.
Rokugan. That shit. I'm drawing a complete blank right now. I can't. Rokugan is another game. Legend of the Five Rings.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of sort of crossover with Legend of the Five Rings, where TSR was printing some stuff, and then there was also a Legend of the Five Rings game that was completely separate.
Yeah.
I'll have to do more research into how all that worked.
I did play a version of Legend of the Five Rings once, and there was a card game, collectible card game for it.
Yep, still is.
But I think I actually own that Oriental Adventures book from 2001. I do actually own the original Oriental Adventures book from 86 or something like that, 85.
I've got that one, yeah.
But the Oriental Adventures book from 2001, I recall picking it up, and one of our friends said he was going to run an Oriental Adventures game, and it never came to fruition. But I remember like there being like obviously the classic monk, a samurai, Ronin,
right back.
ninja, so high, blah 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 in it. But
somebody did say they were going to run one. I remember that too.
I mean, there were countless games back then that somebody said they were going to run a game, and we'd make characters for it, and we never actually ended up playing those games.
So. Yeah,
there's also a complete Ninjas handbook as part of the complete handbook.
Oh, hell yes.
So
yeah.
So yes, they released the Oriental Adventures book for 3rd edition 2001. I do own a copy of that, but later on they released Legend of the Five Rings Oriental Adventures for 3rd edition. I own probably 20 or 30 books from that series. It came out 2002-ish. But it's under AEG license as well as Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. So, yeah, like I said, it's some weird combination. I actually did run an Oriental Adventures campaign just 2 or 3 years ago with the 3rd edition books. But I never finished the campaign. We ran maybe 5 or 6 games of it and then moved on to something else.
So yeah, I actually just popped up in my PDF of Oriental Adventures from 2001, and the classes available in there are Barbarian, Fighter, Monk, Ranger, Rogue. But then you have the Oriental classes.
Yep,
Samurai, Shaman, Shugenja, Sohai. You have a Sorcerer, and Wuzhen.
Yep.
And it has all the rest of the classes are basically banned. But interestingly enough, like in the introduction, I don't think I ever actually read this part of it, or if I did, I never followed up on it. But it of course references Legend of the Five Rings, and also references or the original Oriental Adventures and Karatur. And but it also says in August 2000, TSR Incorporated published the first Oriental Ventures just a few years. TSR published the first Oriental Ventures a few years after James Clavell's novel Shogun aired on as a TV miniseries. The legend of the samurai shaped much of the D&D gamers' concept of what fantasy Asia could be and should be, and games such as Bushido brought that vision to life alongside Oriental Adventures. So yeah, you know what? Until the Shogun miniseries came out this year, I had no idea it even existed.
Really?
I was just, I mean, it's not something you ever saw in the fucking video store back in the day. I mean, it's like, why would I know?
Well,
Same. A couple of the older gamers I game with, like Brian, like he's like, oh yeah, I fucking watched that like 3 times when it was on TV. I'm like, I was like 6 when that was on TV. I don't know.
I'm gonna say it. I actually did watch it when it was on TV.
Yeah, you're a little older than us.
I am. I have a few years. So I was a kid. You know, I was maybe 10 or something like that when it came out. But I do remember actually watching it. There's this crazy ass scene where there's an earthquake and people are falling into the ground.
They have that scene in the new one. Okay. The new series is incredible. Definitely worth watching.
I started on it and I need to go back and finish it. So Chris, you actually might be interested in the Kara Tour stuff because Kara Tour is actually in the Forgotten Realms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like it's part of the Forgotten Realms. It is to the east of where everything's at. So you go to where
of course to the east.
Yeah, it is. You go to where the Red Wizards are at, which is way to the east, and then you keep going east.
I thought it was just a Sword Coast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Sword Coast is the only thing that exists.
Yeah, and the rest is the Forgotten Realms,
Third Edition
right?
and beyond. Sure, yeah, Sword Coast is pretty much all that exists.
Yeah, this is definitely a forgotten part of the Forgotten Realms.
I mean, if you keep going further west, you end up in Egypt, so,
that's true.
So this conversation reminded me of something I saw a long time ago, and I found it. And I put it in our podcast chat so you guys can take a look at it, and anyone else who's listening can take a look at it. And it's basically... there's a certain time period in our reality where you could have a Victorian gentleman thief, an Old West gunslinger, a former samurai, and an elderly French pirate all be part of the same group at the same time. It's like the 1850s, 1860s time frame.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm thinking when you guys are talking the Oriental Adventures. Samurai just misplaced.
Yeah, and you know what? As Abe Lincoln is getting assassinated, somebody's sending a fucking fax. So time's weird like that.
It really is.
But yeah, I mean, they made an entire comic book series about that. It's called League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
I love that movie so much.
It's so bad.
I know.
John Connery stopped acting.
I love it so much. It's one of my favorite Connery movies.
Oh no!
Movies. We all have movies like that.
My favorite's Faxanadu. So I mean.
Oh my God! All right, we're done here.
Oh my God, no.
I think we are done here, though. I got nothing else.
Real quick, there's also you guys are talking about Ninja Wars. There is a movie called Ninja Wars. It's also called Death of a Ninja.
Yeah.
But best of all, this movie called Ninja Wars stars Hiroyuki Sanada.
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
Yeah, you should fucking know that name.
I guess I gotta Google it. Not gonna tell me.
No.
Yeah, you recognize Hiroyuki Sanada. Yeah, absolutely. He is literally the Shogun from Shogun.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
he's also in John Wick 4. He's also in Bullet Train, Mortal Kombat as Hanzo Hasashi as a Scorpion. He's Musashi in Westworld. He is like the current, like if you need to call somebody up to be a fucking samurai, he's your guy.
Right, he's the new Mako. That's who he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a fucking Endgame.
He was in 47 Ronin. Hey, he was in Rush Hour 3. All right.
Because they needed an Asian guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's Jackie Chan's on Asian? What the fuck? Oh my God.
Yep.
Oh, he also does a lot of voice acting. That's cool.
Yeah, he's always a win. to steal a phrase. Ugh.
Hell, he was in the original Fall Guy series.
What? He must have been a kid, though.
He was also in a movie. He's also in a TV show called Super Electronic Bioman. So I kind of want to watch that.
Yeah, apparently Chris had never heard of Fall Guy.
I mean, he wasn't a kid. He was born in 1960, so he was 20 when Fall Guy came out.
Yeah, that's a kid, sort of.
Ninja in the Dragon's Den.
Ninja in the Dragon's Den. All right. Yeah, I don't really have anything other than I started going through all the PHP 2024 5ER spells and making notations of the differences between the two.
Save that for next week. That's a deep topic.
Yep. And I'm actually going to stream. Involved. I'm going to stream my first 5R game on this Saturday as we do our Curse of Strahd annual, and we're using the 2024 rules.
Oh yeah,
Strahd will never stand up to any weapon masteries, sir.
Unless Strahd himself has weapon masteries.
Aha!
That's how they're gonna win.
I see you and raise you.
I do have weapon masteries and change out 6 weapons in a combat.
I'm gonna change out 6 weapons in combat and turn into a bat and bite you, and you're gonna die of rabies.
Hell yeah!
All right, we're out of here.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Craig.